Hello, Faribault community. My name is Colleen Godfrey, and I've been teaching meditation in the community for about 10 years. I've taught here at the community center several different times, and it's absolutely wonderful to be back. And I just want to extend a warm welcome to you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of my life. If you happen to see me in the community and you've benefited from this program, please feel free to say hello. I think the meditation path, while often it's something that we do in silence, it opens the whole world up to us and we start to feel united with everyone. And you'll start to feel the presence of people even at a distance. It's a beautiful, beautiful way of connecting with the human world. And so I'm happy to share that with you, and I hope that you'll celebrate it with me if we bump into each other on the street someday. To get started, I wanted to show you some different options for taking a seat in meditation. Not everyone is going to be comfortable sitting in this kind of half lotus position that I'm used to doing because I've been meditating for a long time. And to be honest with you, I didn't think I'd ever be able to sit in this. It evolved through time. What most people do, if they happen to have a meditation cushion, and I'll show you my cushion. This is just a standard meditation cushion, and I'm just putting it on a wool blanket. This is a woolen mill blanket. I love my little woolen mill blanket. So a lot of times what people will do with their knees, if you're not sure what to do, is you just drop one leg down, and it's more comfortable for most people to have the legs kind of stacked one in front of the other. This is sometimes called Burmese style sitting. So that's an option to you. Another option that is perfectly legit is to sit in a chair. So if you're sitting in a chair, the main things are that you want your feet to be flat so that there's not a lot of pressure on the backs of the legs. And you want just a nice elongation to your spine. Sometimes we just refer to it as dignifying. And what that means is that we almost imagine that we're like the little Cupid dolls with the little rope coming out of the head that just builds length into the spine. And if you're in this position, during meditation, the chin is slightly tucked, the ears are stacked over the shoulders, and everything just feels solid and relaxed. The key is to find a stable position that also feels relaxed so that you can maintain it through time. And then the last little option, and this is a great option, if you don't have anything fancy, you can sit on a simple yoga block. And I actually find this to be very comfortable. So you wouldn't think of it initially, but it supports the sit bones in just that right way. And you can see that my spine is really able to be elongated and tall. And that's really what you want. The hips are slightly down. So this is an option. But if you're out and you want to meditate in nature and you find an old stump, that's perfect. If you're somewhere and there's a set of stairs, you can sit on a stair. So the main thing is that you can sit wherever it's comfortable for you, just so long as your spine is straight and you can have a dignified posture. So with that, I'll go back to my favorite spot. And I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. And so meditation began for me as a way to deal with stress and anxiety. And in fact, a lot of people in our world today are overwhelmed and stressed out, and they find this path, and it really helps to cultivate a sense of unshakable inner calm, and it's a beautiful thing. So for me, like I said, I was looking for strategies just to reduce stress and anxiety, but what I discovered was it's the most thrilling learning adventure of my lifetime. It's absolutely my passion. And so as you explore this, you might discover that there's kind of something really juicy and complex that gets revealed to you simply from sitting in meditation. And you won't necessarily be able to pin down how that sensation was created, but it lasts. And then you'll find that you might have joy for absolutely no reason whatsoever as a benefit of the meditation practice. So at first it shows you how much autonomy you have over your mind and the responses and behaviors, but eventually it gives you the confidence to surrender that autonomy to a deeper and more delicious flow. And as you do, and your sensitivities increase, all kinds of previously overlooked dynamics make themselves apparent. So if you're a person who's kind of interested in building intuition, which is a popular thing right now, the meditation path definitely opens you up to your own inner wisdom. And so you'll suddenly just start finding that, like, how did I know that? And so it develops a really great kind of self-confidence that comes from the ineffable. And so it makes it kind of a mystery, and it's a beautiful, spiritual, mysterious practice that will complement your life in many ways. Sometimes I think about meditation as the art of simply becoming more human. It expands your bandwidth in two directions. The direction one is out, so you see and feel more. And this isn't always pleasant because, as you know, in the world right now, there's concerns with the COVID-19 virus. We're hearing more about people dying. There's uncertainty about if we're going to have to shelter in place, uncertainty about employment situations, uncertainty about how to school our children. So these aren't necessarily things that are pleasant, but with a meditation practice, you build a kind of unshakable confidence that allows you to show up and engage life on its own terms. And one of the things, sometimes we fall into this habit of just sort of moving through life robotically, like this is expected of me and now I have to do this, and it's, evening, so I have to be there. And there's just not a lot of passion, there's not a lot of aliveness in living that way. And the meditation path definitely shakes things up, so you feel more curious and alive and engaged, and there's more delight and more pleasure. And with this, there's an increase in general sensitivity. And so it means that more and more of sometimes the heartbreaking things in human life are right inside you. They're right in front of you. They're all around you. So it's rich and it's beautiful, but it's a path that sometimes they call it the warrior path because it's a path that leaves nothing out. And so many things that you once overlooked, they now kind of cut to the quick. So you can neither hide from yourself nor from the suffering of others. So it's a very deep and rich process. What I wanted to share with you today as we get this series started, and we're going to have a number of sessions. I don't know the exact number of sessions. Some of this, of course, depends on if we're able to come back and socialize together. So I'm doing this as a free will offering during this time where more and more people are sheltering in place and social distancing. And with regards to that, the practice that I want to bring for us today, it has to do with the power of resilience. And some of this information comes from Daniel Goleman, and Daniel is probably the expert on emotional intelligence in the United States. But what I hope is that this course will provide you with helpful tools during this difficult time. Many of us may feel like victims of circumstances at this time, and however, we still have the powerful capacities for adaptability over which we do have control. So today I'm going to share what I know about meditation, and we're going to learn also a little bit about the neuroscience behind emotional regulation and how everyone can become more resilient during this most challenging time. It's certainly the most challenging time I've ever experienced historically. So in our ever-changing world, resilience is vital for us to survive and even grow through difficulty. And we often expect our lives to go in one direction, and then we get thrown off course by a change in jobs, an illness, a pandemic, and it's this, with the coronavirus, it's really natural to feel unease and a degree of uncertainty that is going to come along with life right now. Changes seem kind of radical, they seem abrupt. We go to the grocery store and the shelves are empty, and it puts us in situations that we just simply aren't used to being in, so we're adapting to change. But recovering and being resilient means that we're able to quickly adapt, making us better able to leverage change, better able to solve problems, and even better able to settle conflict. So today we're going to gain some insight into research and learn some simple meditative exercises that will help you strengthen your resilience. Daily doses of knowledge and personal insight are combined here in this program, so you can navigate through this content along with me. And right now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the role emotional balance plays in resilience. And I'm going to share with you a story about a college professor I had who was the expert on stress. So this was it was just like a 2-credit seminar, so it was like a weekend class. And this particular professor was a very dignified gentleman. He had the silver hair and the tweed jacket and the penny loafers. And he came into this big auditorium. There were about 300 of us students in the class, and he had a wooden pointer stick, and I'm dating myself, but we still used chalkboards. So he got his rolling chalkboard set up on this stage, and he was on the stage himself next to the podium, and he started delivering this content on stress. And he had just come back from a symposium, so he was enlivened with all of this information to share. And when he was done sharing, he asked if anybody had any questions. And somewhere back further in the audience, a woman raised her hand, and she said, "Some of the information that you just shared conflicted with what I was reading earlier today. Can you help me understand it?" And she made her points. And what happened at that time was the professor, we'll talk about what an amygdala hijack is, but he went into what you would call amygdala hijack. He completely freaked out. He proved to us that indeed he was the expert on stress, but not in the way that he wanted to. And he just blew up, and he grabbed his pointer stick and he started literally beating it on the podium, and he said, "People, you've got to hear me. I am the expert on stress. I am the expert on stress. I don't want to hear what other people think about stress. I am the expert." And he smashed his pointer stick, and the broken piece flew out in the audience and hit somebody in the head. And then he was beating into his fists, and he really could not bring himself into emotional regulation. So the meditation practice that we're going to talk about today is what to do when we're that person who's triggered and we find ourselves not able to regroup. So this is called the neuroscience of emotional balance. Whenever we feel threatened, there's a part of our brain called the amygdala, and it activates. And this is part of a primal set of circuitry that it evolved to warn us about things like getting attacked by lions or big falling rocks and things like that. And so it's a really primitive, ancient functioning of the brain, and it works closely with the hippocampus, which is the memory center, to catalog threats that we've encountered. And so this example of my professor, who was the expert on stress, is an example where that content got triggered. And but there's another part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, and is the center for thinking and reasoning. When we meditate, we actually enhance the prefrontal cortex. There's a lot of research on this. And so this is a highly sophisticated area that controls decision-making, focus. It focuses our attention. It helps us compute. It helps us analyze and interpret information. And it also helps us downregulate the easy stimulated amygdala. So the amygdala really has one goal, and that is to look for threats. And if it sees one, it puts us into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And when we get caught in any of those stages, the prefrontal cortex is sort of offline. So we're vulnerable. It's a vulnerability that we have, and we need a technique in order to bring in these higher brain functionings so that we can get out of these habitual states. But when the amygdala closes down, it really kind of sets us up to either jump into fighting, to being combative, or to freezing or pulling away. So the amygdala has always served an important function. It keeps us safe, and it likes to play safe, and it tends to take immediate steps to get you ready to fight, flight, or freeze. And that's why when the amygdala is calling the shots, it's really impossible to make good decisions, which is what happened for this college professor of mine. But today I'm going to teach you a way to take back control. And this is when we bring our awareness to our emotions. That can be a really important first step to calming your amygdala. And so you're recognizing that I am experiencing whatever it is right here, right now. So today, if you're watching the news, you might feel triggered. A lot of people are in anxiety. Some people are feeling really scared right now. And some of that happens to be this amygdala process, and it's feeling like there's a threat. And so one of the things that we can do, and this is just a really simple meditation practice, is we just sit down on our cushion and we take 3 deep breaths in. And then we just tune in to the heart. And we kind of have a communication deliberately with the heart so that we're getting out of the head and we're dropping into the heart center, which it just has a different pool of wisdom. It draws from a different body of intelligence. And then we notice, this is how it is now. Right now I'm feeling anxious. And so this is the meditation process. We might ask, can I be with this? Can I meet this anxiety just as it is without needing to change it in any way? And then you tune into the body and you really tune into the sensations that are happening in the body. And every so often, you just use that simple note, this is how it is now. And you can do this with anything. You can do it if you're feeling sadness. You can do it if you're feeling annoyed with your kids or your spouse, or if you're feeling really lonesome and sad, if you're really missing one of the activities that you loved, but now because we can't go out and enjoy sports with other people right now. Some of us are grieving simple losses, and so we sit with this particular practice and take a deep breath and say, this is how it is now. This is what I'm feeling now. And this works really effectively because, as some of the different psychologists point out, you have to name what you're feeling in order to tame it. And you have to deal with it in order to clear it. So when we show up for ourselves in meditation, we're tuning into the wildness of our own inner workings. And we're really starting to pay attention to what pushes our buttons. And then without really doing anything about it, we just open and embrace those parts of ourselves without judging them. So we're witnessing, we're feeling the sensations in the body, and we're asking, can I be okay with this just as it is right now? And that simple practice is a practice that helps cultivate fearlessness, and it helps cultivate something called equanimity. And equanimity, one of my friends describes equanimity as like, the Fonzie technique. And if you remember the show Happy Days, Arthur Fonzarelli was the cool guy. He was always happy. Nothing ever bothered him. He had his leather jacket on. He was always ready to go. So this is like the Fonzie technique. You just show up for things exactly as they are. Embrace them. If it's really painful, you can breathe into it. You can send loving kindness to yourself. And what this does from the neurobiological perspective is it reconnects us to the prefrontal cortex. And when we're connected to the prefrontal cortex rather than the amygdala, then we start to have choices. Then we start to be able to react not with our conditioned knee-jerk responses, but with something that's actually really appropriate for that moment. The other thing that meditation does with regards to building resilience is that when we sit in meditation, one of the processes that we can do is just simply breathing meditation, where you're just sitting as I'm sitting now. And you breathe in and you breathe out. And maybe the first 2 or 3 breaths really deliberate. And then you just allow the body to breathe as it normally does. And you're training your awareness on the breath. And we're just focusing on breathing. We're letting everything else fall away. And we're just coming into the experience of life breathing itself in the body. And the more you have oxygen in your bloodstream, the better your chances are of managing an amygdala hijack. So this is to say, if you find yourself in a really tricky situation, and for example, I tend to get steamed when I'm with those people, or if this person asks me that question again, it's really going to push my buttons. I mean, we kind of know ourselves. We know the people who trigger us. And so what we can do is just drop into the breath. And we can label how we're feeling stressed, feeling resistance about going into that meeting, feeling annoyed, whatever it is, feeling anxious. I don't know why I'm feeling anxious. You don't have to know the reason. You're just tuning into what you feel and breathing life in and around it. And giving a name to your feelings helps you open to a more rational state of mind. Bringing that oxygen into the bloodstream calms everything down, and it gets the amygdala offline. And it's really easy to combine those two as allies in a simple strategy for staying calm and in control. So you're just breathing, letting the breath nourish the whole body, and you'll really feel it. If you're paying attention, you'll feel the whole body just well up, and it feels more expansive, it feels more free and relaxed. You'll feel the shoulders kind of melting down the back. And you'll notice that whatever the hostility or the agitation starts to really ease up. And if you come back to this practice, which you can do anywhere, you could do it in the car, if you're driving to pick up the kids, you could do it at your desk at work, you can do this while you're walking, and it really helps to short circuit the amygdala's natural attempt to restrict higher reasoning. So I think we'll go ahead and we'll just practice this technique a little bit more right now. So if you take your seat and you sit in a dignified posture with the spine straight, chin slightly tucked, and you can simply think of a time when you were involved in or observed a conflict or a sudden change that made you uncomfortable. You don't have to pick the most pronounced experience, just something along the lines of a mild annoyance. And then you imagine that and you feel in your being where tightness, for me, right now, thinking of something that annoyed me, I feel tightness coming over my chest. I feel a little bit of tightness around the throat. I feel some tightness kind of on the tops of the shoulders and down the back of the neck. And then we just breathe into it. You can specifically breathe into the spaces where you're holding tightness. You can even put a slight smile on your face. And this is actually, it's called a skillful means. If you put a slight smile on your face, it automatically turns on the kind of happiness centers in the brain. And so if you put the slight smile on your face and you're breathing into these places where there's tension, and you're loving yourself, you're loving your tension, you're attuned to your own sense of experience, you start to feel more resilient. You start to feel like, I don't even know what I was worried about. I don't even know what was bothering me. And then you have freedom. You have real freedom. So moving forward, you can keep out an eye for opportunities like this, where you're really accountable to your sense of being emotionally hijacked, and you're very deliberately trying to stay calm, and you're really deliberately trying to open to the moment with curiosity and wonder, rather than with some preconceived notion. Because when we can show up with curiosity and wonder and with joy in our hearts, we can be a lot more effective at coming up with strategies, coming up with solutions. Maybe there's no problem there at all. If the problem's not in you, maybe the problem actually doesn't even exist. And so we can just get on with our lives in a way that's much more harmonious. And if we experience more harmony, then we naturally have this wellspring of resilience that's working for us. So you can just try that again for a few more moments. So breathing into the now, breathing into the present moment, sitting with our own stuff. Can the heart be capable of generosity? You can ask that question even at times if you really feel ticked off. If you're really caught, if you're really hung up on something, you can settle in, take a few deep breaths, and just say, is this heart capable of generosity? Is this heart capable of showing up to brave the wild thing called life? This ungovernable life where we think we've laid out our plans and then something comes along like coronavirus and really changes the landscape of our lives, trashes our financial systems, puts us into states of insecurity. Can we still have generosity in our heart? Can we still connect with love, a sense of loving compassion for our neighbors, for ourselves, for our family, for the people who help keep our community running, the frontline workers, the clerks at the grocery store, the people who deliver our mail, the street sweepers? And if we're so tight and so cold, like ice on the lake, there's no flexibility in that. If we feel cold, if our heart is hardened, it's a lot like the icy lake. And if it cracks, it's not a good thing. It might be a sign of danger. So can we soften? Can we bring some warmth in? Can we find it in ourselves to create flow? And I like this metaphor of the water. If you look at water, often, there's this warmth of vapors and it creates a kind of fluidity. And ultimately, we want to be like that. We want to be fluid and flowing and free rather than solid and fixed like a block of ice. So we can practice with this a little bit longer, tuning into the body, tuning into any concerns that you have, tuning into whatever's underlying your anxiety at this time, and making space for it, allowing it to be there. And showing up like a loving parent and saying, it's okay. This is how it is now. And breathe into it. And the more we breathe into it, we find, in fact, that we do have the capacity for love. And when we are really centered in a field of love, there's no selfishness with it. And we start to feel unified, and we feel unified with people around us. We don't even know why we feel unified. We feel connected. And it's those feelings of unification and connection and community, especially at this time when we're distant from our community. In meditation, we can fall into this space where we see that there's no division. We're in a unified field of consciousness. And from this space, we can actually feel held, we can feel loved. Everything feels, it can really just feel like everything's A-okay. There's nothing to fear. And you might notice that your mind becomes calm. It may even become still. Some people don't experience real stillness of mind until they've meditated for many years. Sometimes I'm grounded in a field of stillness. And from that place of stillness, I don't lack for anything. I'm not worried about anything. And so this is the fruit of the practice, is that we get glimpses and glimmers that even in the midst of chaos and confusion, when the world is beyond anyone's control, we can care for ourselves mindfully through this process of meditation and access a deep well of unshakable clarity. We can expand our tolerance as human beings and recognize that everybody gets triggered, everybody gets dysregulated from time to time, and we don't have to feel threatened by it. We can be okay with whatever's arising. So that's practice number one. It's tuning into your feeling state, your cognitive state, your emotional state, breathing into it, and just asking the question, can I be with this right now? This is how it is now. So we're anchoring the practice in the present moment, bringing it back to the now. And when we do this, if you did this over a long period of time, you would find that all of your resentments, going back however far, they're just gone. So it's really a technique that can purify the whole storehouse of, emotional stuff that is kind of been cluttered up in our bodies and minds over generations. But it can also work just immediately right in this moment, and it anchors us in the now. And enables us to be better prepared to engage life and to take action. And to do that in a way that's loving and trusting and considerate and generous. So we can just take a few more breaths here before we end. And if joy is rising up, if you feel an uprising, an upwelling of joy or contentment, notice that and cherish it. That's how we get good feelings to grow, is by tuning into them. When they arise, we want to really show up and say, oh my God, I feel so happy right now. I'm happy and I don't even know why I'm happy. And that's the byproduct of meditation. And you can increase that byproduct just by keying into it and by recognizing it. And then you'll be happy for no reason, and you'll be smirking and giggling, and people will want to hang around. They'll want to know, what'd she do? Why is she so happy today? Or why is he so happy today? So it's a beautiful thing. So take one or two more breaths, and then I'm going to give you a little prep as to what we'll be talking about for the next session. So I have this particular curriculum. It comes from a unified mindfulness, which was developed by Shinzen Young. And Shinzen is one of the most well-known meditators in the United States. A lot of people consider him to be a genius. And when Shinzen leads retreats, which are seldom these days because he's older now, he's aging and he's semi-retired. When he opens up a retreat, oftentimes, even if it's a retreat that could have like 500 people, the retreat will sell out in under 7 minutes. So he's extremely well known and he's extremely sought after because he figured out a system to take the mindfulness teachings of the Buddha and really adapt them for modern times. So this particular program is a secular program. It won't conflict, if whatever your religion is, it's not going to conflict with that. And there's many meditation techniques that we will be learning here. So you'll end up with a whole toolbox of different techniques. And we need different techniques because when we find ourselves in different situations, it's nice to have a set of tools. So Shinzen calls this system basic mindfulness, which is most of what we'll be learning. The practices are essentially, like I said, a composite of worldwide contemplative techniques, mostly from Buddhism, although many of their analogs come from other traditions. And Shinzen himself emphasized these practices are not part of a belief system per se, rather they are skills and techniques that can be used by any belief system. And the 3 hallmarks of this unified mindfulness system are: one is that it creates a sense of sensory clarity. So I talked a little bit before about some people find that they are able to access their intuition. We know things with clarity. We don't even know why. So sensory clarity is the ability to untangle our strands of experience and have this kind of like eureka insight into things. The other skill that we're building with this practice is equanimity, and that's the ability to allow experience to come and go without interference. So if the wind is choppy, if the wind is cold, if the wind is in our face, if there's no wind and it's a beautiful sunny day, we're okay with all of it. We're okay with life coming at us however it presents itself. And another benefit of unified mindfulness is that it enhances your sense of concentration. So if you have a big project that you're working on, if you're a student and you're struggle to find ways to really concentrate and buckle down, these practices help enhance that sense of concentration. So mindfulness is like exercise for the mind, and over time as we meditate, we increase our baseline levels of these skills. More concentration improves our ability to focus on what's important in our lives, and this helps us to be more effective. It also helps us get into fulfilling flow with work or life or whatever. So a more concentrated mind is a happier mind, and there's lots of good research on that now. If we have more sensory clarity, that improves our ability to notice the details of our actual experience, and it has many benefits, from increasing the vividness and richness of life to having better information about our internal state. Eventually, it leads to a radical form of insight and self-knowledge that shifts and expands one's whole identity. So different contemplative traditions have different terms for this shift, but one of them is enlightenment. And one of the reasons that I have this set up for you here is that with sensory clarity, we really take in the beauty of the simple beauty of life that's all around us. We can really take in something as simple as a bouquet of tulips, and it can really deeply touch and move us and inspire us. And so this is one of the reasons that when we meditate, sometimes it does help to just have little reminders of natural beauty, because when we're meditating, we're cultivating our own natural beauty, and that gets reflected in the world around us as well. And finally, here's the equanimity piece that I hope will bring you back to practice again next time. I could talk forever about equanimity. It's probably the most important thing I've learned from Shinzen. Equanimity is radical non-interference. It's this ability to be an observer without being a reactor, to just show up and observe, allow, without having these big reactions, that amygdala hijacking kind of thing. So it's a kind of smoothness in the sensory system, and where you don't push and you don't pull on your inner and outer experience. You learn to be kind of a ninja of the smoothness. There's friction-free, fluid. You can think of even like moonwalking through life, like Michael Jackson in his prime. And it's just all kind of energy gets freed up when you stop fighting with yourself, when you stop fighting with life. And so if you have that basis of concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity, you start to have greater access to this joy that exists for absolutely no reason. And as I said, I've got a whole toolkit of different kinds of meditation techniques to show you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm honored to bring these teachings to you. And if you like them, please send your feedback to the Community Center. This program is offered freely, and I do want to thank Faribault Park and Recs and Faribault Community Center and FCTV for coming together to create a quality program to help us get through this interesting phase of our human lives. Thank you so much.